Hello, everyone. I'm Bill Raggio. I'm a senior fellow at Foundation for Defense of Democracies and editor of FDD's Long War Journal. And this is Generation Jihad, the podcast that covers all things that used to be known as the global war on terror, but what we call the Long War. Today, again, we are going to discuss the issue that is on everyone's mind. That's front and center, the war in Gaza, Israel. Of course, we're going to be joined today by my friend and colleague, Joe Truesman. He is a researcher at Foundation for Defense of Democracies, as well as a contributor for the Long War Journal. Joe, welcome to Generation Jihad. And we got a little special surprise today. We are actually in studio here at FDD's office in Washington. Our producer, Danielle, has a nice little setup here. It's pretty sweet. It's nice to actually do a podcast in person with Joe and Danielle. Usually we're doing this over Zoom. So this is a first for Generation Jihad. Welcome, Joe. Great to see you as well.
Of course, I appreciate being here and joining you once again.
Yeah, no, this is great. This is fun to do in person. I get that, a lot of times with work, everything's remote and we're looking on screens, and nice to press the flesh and look in your eyes and tell you I love you, Joe. But I
love me too.
Okay. So yeah, we had I think a lot going on, obviously, over the last 24 hours. We haven't talked since.
It's like 3 days. I think it's last time we talked was like Friday, maybe.
Was it Sunday?
Sunday.
Yeah. The days are melting.
The days are melting, so it's okay.
Yeah, but yeah, so we have a lot today. We're recording right around 10:30 on. What's today? Thursday? Wednesday? Something. It's Wednesday, right? Okay. Yeah. 10:30 Wednesday. I believe it's October 18th. Yeah, sure. All right. Enough of that. But first and foremost, the information war that is coming out of Gaza over the last, I guess it'd be the 24 hours, with a blast at a hospital in Gaza. Hamas immediately comes out, claims 500 people killed, immediately points a finger at the Israel Defense Forces. Israel comes back, says, no, we didn't do this, and produces evidence. We're going to talk about that, Joe. But Joe, let's get into this. Tell us, what happened here. What are we seeing? And let's just discuss how this is playing out.
Right. So yeah, just like you were saying, there was a blast at a hospital in Gaza. Initially, it was blamed on an airstrike by the Israeli military. Hamas came out saying 500 people were killed. And then but after that, it became obvious, but there were some pretty big questions there because there was video coming out too, right, of what happened. And then you notice rather than the IDF started saying that they weren't involved, that they didn't launch an airstrike there. So, and they started producing evidence, right? So they started publishing like videos and from, for example, there was an Al Jazeera video of the rockets being fired, and then an explosion on the ground. These rockets were being fired from Gaza, of course, and there was some other video as well. So questions started popping up because this evidence was starting to show up. Maybe it's not an airstrike. Maybe it was a misfire or an errant rocket by Palestinian Islamic Jihad or another armed group. And
so is it another possibility? Is it possible that the IDF shot down a rocket as well? I've seen video of that being produced that appeared to show that, but that seemed a little odd to me. But like you said, there's a lot of questions out there about this from what we're seeing.
Right. I can't say for sure, who's at fault here, because problem is also it happened at nighttime. You can't, then from the video, you can't see can't see where the rockets or their trajectory. People can make educated guesses, right? But yes, it's possible that an Iron Dome Tamir interceptor was launched and hit the rocket, but I think the Israeli military would know if that happened.
I think so too. Yeah, I looked at that video. Sorry, I didn't mean to hijack there, but I saw that video and people are saying it looks like a shoot down, and I'm saying like it's the supposed impact. I think what we're witnessing there is a rocket breaking up. But over Gaza. I thought most of these missiles were intercepted over Israel, right? It's like real close after launch again. But with the point being, lots of questions here. The video, again, like you said, at night, right? So the perspective, everything looks flat. But there's a history of this, right, Joe?
Yeah.
Tell us about this.
Yeah, and it's a very important factor here. So, for example, in last year and the year before, I was giving two examples. Of course, there's other examples. Last year, Al Mayadeen News Network, which is super pro Hamas, Hezbollah, really coddles up to the axis of resistance type groups. And
they should name themselves the voice of the resistance.
Yeah.
Right?
Pretty much, right? So anyway, they were live in Gaza during a limited conflict between Islamic Jihad and Israel. And so they're shooting live video, and then these rockets are being fired in Gaza. I can't remember where in Gaza. I'm not sure if it was Gaza City. I can't recall. Anyway, and then they on live TV, they record these rockets being launched from Gaza, and then one of the rockets goes astray, and it goes towards the camera. And I'm watching it, and it's pretty – I would have been scared to death because I thought, it's just, oh, God, this rocket's coming towards me. And then it lands right near the crew, and it hits a neighborhood. So there's evidence there that these rockets go astray. And then there's another, and then the year before, something similar happened. So there's history there of rockets being fired that are basically no good. Because we got to remember, these are terrorists. These are terrorist groups that are putting together these rockets, and some of them
launching them from civilian population,
exactly,
launching them over civilian population,
right? And we see it. There's video of these Hamas putting together rockets from water pipes dug out of the ground. It's so these guys aren't, I want to say they're rocket scientists, but, so they make mistakes. So it's very likely this happened here. So I think that's an important point.
Yeah, I concur. I that's what leads me to believe is this was an errant rocket, some type of misfire. In the wider jihadi world, we always sort of mocked when a suicide bomber would accidentally blow up his vest, and we jokingly called it premature detonation. I think this is sort of the Hamas Palestinian Islamic Jihad version of that. Yeah, people, look, again, if I didn't have dark humor, I'd have none. So,
but we see that in the Palestinian armed groups too. Yeah. They call it work accidents.
Yeah, work accidents is another one. Yeah.
Right.
That's usually when the IED goes off.
Right. Yeah. And yes, exactly. It goes off accidentally for whatever reason. So yeah, but it does happen with armed Palestinian armed groups.
I really think we're looking at now. The IDF came out. They did respond to this. As you noted, they would have told us. Look. Who are you going to trust here? This is definitely a he said, she said situation. And unfortunately, he happens to be a terrorist group that is known for lying about these incidents. It has a long history of this in the past. But the IDF released some drone footage of the site. It actually didn't appear to strike the hospital itself, but in a parking lot, right. A very small area. There might have been like 10 or 15 cars in this area. Mm-hmm. No, look, why would the IDF launch a strike there in that location? They understand that this is a hospital. There's only one reason I could think, or several. There's a couple of reasons why the IDF might take a strike at the hospital in this type of situation. A high value target being there, one or more, and they'd have to be pretty damn high. Perhaps some type of rocket launch, but I actually think they might let that type of thing pass if it was launched from a hospital location. And, one of the things that really caught, Hamas came out immediately and said that 500 people were killed. We talked about that a little earlier. I'm looking at this location. I don't know how you put 500 people in there. It would look like Times Square, in this small spot. So that you have all these data points that tells me something isn't right here. And, one thing that Hamas is really good at, and Joe, you know this better than just about anyone, is Hamas is great at weaponizing incidents like this.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. For example, I'll give you another example just really quickly. So Hamas routinely is right now, actually, especially during this war, routinely publishes statements. For example, let's say there's a rocket alert for Tel Aviv, for example. the alert comes out that rockets are being fired on Tel Aviv from Gaza. Then Hamas will publish a statement on one of their official channels, online channels rather, that says something to the effect of, we're bombing Tel Aviv in response to the massacres committed against Palestinian civilians in Gaza. That's become routine now. We're seeing that they're saying that they're responding to Israeli airstrikes because of civilian deaths. And I'm telling you, that's just a load of nonsense. Yeah. It really is. Because if they were concerned about the civilians in Gaza, they would just say, hey, you know what? Here are the hostages. Please, let's just stop. Let's talk. Let's do something political. It would be political, right? It'll be a political agreement.
Let's not launch rockets.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right.
To continue airstrikes.
Exactly. But the thing is, they're trying to convey this image of being resistance fighters. They are resisting the so-called occupation. So they're by saying that they're protecting or they're responding against civilian deaths, they're just trying to boost their image as like this freedom fighters. I'm sorry, freedom fighters don't go into communities, rape, murder, torture, abduct, burn people. You know, I'm sorry, it's just ridiculous. So it's just totally, there's a kinetic war right now, and then there's the information war. And that's been a thing with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict for years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, what they did in that October 7th attack, it was like the Vikings came to town. That's just barbarism we just don't see. We don't expect to see in the 21st century. And yet, you want to, if that's what freedom looks like, I want no part of it. You could keep your freedom fighters. The Arab, in fact, we're going to talk a little bit more about that PR war here, Jay. You really hit on the issue here. So first, the response in the region. Often much maligned Arab Street really showed up last night. You saw protests in Turkey, in Lebanon, in Iraq, in Baghdad, outside the U.S. Embassy. I'm probably missing other locations, but very disturbing images of, despite, all the burden. What drives me crazy about this is all the burden, even the Western press runs with this. They run immediately with the 500 dead. They run immediately with it was an Israeli airstrike. And then Israel is forced to offer evidence of how it wasn't. And the way this actually works, like in science, is those who make the claim have to offer proof. Hamas needed to offer proof of an Israeli airstrike here. That's how this should work. But in the real world, unfortunately, it works in the press world, it works the other way around. And now look, I don't know whether the Western media influenced these protests that we've seen across the Arab world, last night. But, and the reality is that a lot of the Arab press, is going to buy these narratives. Al Jazeera, et cetera, are going to bite on these narratives quickly. So Joe, my question I have for you here is, does the truth matter here? Does it, at the end, this is a PR war as much as a physical war. And I think the Israelis lost the PR war here as soon as the first salvo was fired. It's like all the cards are the deck is stacked against the Israelis in matters like this.
Yeah. It's almost like people forgot how this all started, right?
Yeah.
At least the October 7th attack. So, yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. What the Israelis did as far as trying to prove that they weren't responsible is actually notable. And what I mean by that is that not only did they release, drone video and other types of video, they actually published an intercept between members of terrorist organizations that pointed towards it being the strike being caused by Palestinian armed groups. So And what they're doing there, which is notable, is that they're actually they're giving up a source there, the intelligence.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
that's a big thing. Believe me, Israeli intelligence does not like to publish this type of information to the public. They don't like, because yes, they're giving up a source. They may be giving up methods and how they intercept this conversation. So yeah, it's a big deal. But it's I'll say real quick that, but it favors Hamas as far as these protests, because I've said it all along that all Hamas needs to do, and they've done this before, is just hunker down and wait. They have to wait, because international pressure will get to, let's say, the United States or Israel, and eventually they may buckle, and that war's over.
Yeah, one of the conundrum I've had with this war from the very beginning is the Israelis are in a situation where their public will demand the dismantlement of Hamas, which requires a ground invasion. And yet the international pressure for the Israelis to be proportional, to be fast, to end the war quickly, to move on to the peace stage, whatever that means. Who wins there? I mean, what Israeli government can survive going soft on Hamas after what the Israeli people? So, they're in a difficult position. It's going to be, interesting is the only word that I could think of. It's not the right word, to see how this plays out over time. The propaganda aspect of this war, and, one of the Israeli Defense Force spokesmen, he said, look, we're all about accountability. We want to get to the bottom of this. And, this is difficult, but how can you immediately run with what Hamas says and discount what we're saying? And look, we don't know. Joe and I don't know what happened here. We're talking about the what likely happened here. I can't rule out that this was some type of errant Israeli missile, that a bomb went awry, something like that. I don't see evidence of that. What I do see is the Israelis trying to put their side of the story out there. And that audio, I heard that this morning, right before I got into the office here. And it's compelling, but is the Arab Street going to buy it? Are they going to buy the visual evidence that the IDF put out? Because everyone, has been conditioned now to just say the Israelis are lying. The Israelis are lying. They're covering. Mm-hmm. They just want to kill. What drives me crazy about the genocide narrative that exists in Palestine with the Palestinians is, if the Israelis wanted to commit genocide, A, they know what that looks like because they lived through it, and B, they have the means to do it. And yet we're talking over the last 2 decades, how many Israelis have been killed since Gaza was abandoned by the Israelis. It's not occupied. Is several thousand? Yeah, that's not what genocide looks like. But these are the narratives that take place. So any final thoughts on that, Joe, before we move on and get a little northern update? I realize I'm opining there. But.
Yeah. No, you got it. That's all you need is, Hamas, what Hamas may say, and through their because they control the media, they control almost everything that comes out of Gaza. So they say 500 killed, and then you show some video and put it up on, I guess not Twitter anymore, X. Yeah. So I'll figure that out. But yeah, that's all they need, and then it just is disseminated from there, and that's it. The Israelis, they have to. And don't get me, they have to act fast and try to counter this information, but it's difficult. Unfortunately, when it comes to this type of information warfare, the Israelis they're slow at it.
But so it takes and because this type of information is difficult. All the Israelis can do as soon as the claim is made is saying, we're aware of the event. We're investigating to see if we're responsible for this, and we will. But that takes time. You have to call a commander. You need to you need to look at video. There's all of these things that have to happen to get to the bottom of it. But as soon as that first salvo, that information salvo, is fired by Hamas, it's over, and it's unfair. but that's the reality. I mean, and this is part of, living in the instant information age. So, I mean, hell, I grew up, Joe. I'm old enough to remember, when cable came out, the internet wasn't even a thing. So, and yeah, I walked uphill both ways to school in the snow and rain as well. But, it's such a, the information, you got it from your networks. There was time taken to develop that information and to disseminate it to you. And now all you need is an iPhone or a Samsung, take a video of a couple of people that were killed in some attack, make up a fake number, and there you go. Yeah. And you won the opening. You won a battle in the information war.
Exactly. And I can't tell you how many times that's happened. I've noted and I've witnessed that. So as far as, video of whatever, and then published, and then it goes, viral. And then, and even some networks will carry it too. And then you find
it's enticing.
Later, yeah. Then you find out later, it was actually either it was fake, or faked, or it was a completely different event from another year. So yeah, you don't have that type of verification, I guess you can say.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Joe, the videos I watched from that last evening, they're all from different angles. How do I even know they're looking at the same event? How do I know that was all from the same day?
And that's what I've been in the last less than 24 hours now. People have been asking me, a lot of people that I work with and journalists as well. They ask, so Joe, can you tell me, do you think these are the same videos? And I just tell all of them, it's like, I don't know. It's dark. And, these type of, I can't tell you how many videos out there of rocket fire from the Gaza Strip that are out there. There's got to be thousands, right, because there's been so much conflict there, right? So I can't say for sure, but at least now everything points to, at least in my assessment, it seems like that it was an errant rocket fire. But still early. Hopefully we'll get more information. I doubt Hamas or Islamic Jihad will provide evidence such as maybe the pieces of the rocket or missile or whatever you want to call it. They won't. I doubt they'll do that.
Anyway. Who's to say they couldn't go to a site where the Israelis launched a strike, grab fragments, and seed them on the ground? Who's going to conduct an investigation in Gaza right now? Who can be immediately on the scene? Do we trust Hamas to conduct that investigation?
No, absolutely not.
That's the problem here. And this is, the press needs to exercise responsibility here, and have some patience and look at the facts as opposed to react emotionally to these issues.
Right. And that's what we do a lot in our work. We see a video, whether, with me, if it's from, like, say, the West Bank, or if it's from Afghanistan, for example. And I look at it and just have to not just question it, but really just make sure and ensure that it's real, it's legitimate. I double check. I go back and just make sure, maybe to make sure that's not from another conflict or something else. Because the thing is, once you get to a certain, if I publish something, it can have an effect, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
And I understand that responsibility that I have now, or what we do at Long War, or what Long War Journal does as well. So we got to be super sure. We're not just uploading stuff on just videos and things like that just to do it. So, and I think, I think that's what happened here. People, some outlets and just other people that are online, 500 dead, Israeli airstrike on hospital. Oh my God. Like, that's definitely going to grab headlines. So
yeah, it's clicks, it's views. You brought up an interesting point, right? With what we look at. I remember, I've looked at numerous jihadi videos. Mm-hmm. One of the things I really honed in on in Afghanistan was Taliban videos of their training camps, right? Or their training.
Exactly. Yes.
And they would say it's in this province or it's in that province. Now, did I know that they were doing it in this province? I didn't. I'd be very clear. Taliban claim, we can't confirm. Exactly. But clearly they were training people. Right. And I was interested in the type of training, which, by the way, was dismissed by many as being amateur. And then guess who won the war in Afghanistan? But here we are. So it's a very difficult. And you're right. I do recall him going, did I see this video before? Is this new? Is this old footage? Now in propaganda videos where they're just sort of making points, often you'd see recycled videos. Usually with the videos like with training camps and stuff, that was usually new. You start learning patterns, you start watching, but every time you looked at something, you still have to ask those critical questions about the validity of the information that you look at, knowing that the people that are putting these out are terrorist organizations that aren't often very reliable. I was fortunate with the Taliban on certain issues. They happen to be very reliable. As long as I stayed in that lane, I could give it a higher confidence of reliability, but still knowing that they might put one over on.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh, there's lots of nonsense right now coming out of, Hamas and other groups, in this war right now that I've noticed. I won't go into all of it, but, we've already explained a little bit of it. Absolutely. And I'm seeing it repeated online or in the media, and I'm thinking to myself, you guys don't know what you're talking about, like, cause we have experience, you and I, Bill, in this type of stuff, so we can kind of just see through the BS, I guess I'll call it, right?
Like that audio, I realize we want to move on to Gaza, but this is such a fascinating subject to me. I've been doing this for a long time, and I saw these things develop in Iraq. I saw them develop in Afghanistan. I saw them develop firsthand in both of those countries, but in other theaters as well. Like that audio that the IDF released, the two Hamas fighters talking about, the people are saying, oh, that's just fake, right? Like but you listen to that. If that's fake, that's the most clever. There's these pauses. You could actually hear the one Hamas fighter going, you could hear it in his head. It's going, oh shit. Right? Like that's literally what's going through this guy's mind because he realized that, and that's what they're saying is it's short fired and they're responsible for this. Yeah. But the thing is he's wrong. Not, oh shit. He should have been thinking, we'll get away with this anyway.
Right. And listen, if somebody is looking to invalidate this audio, they'll find something. They'll make something up in their head or whatever. So if they think it's fake or they want it to be fake, they'll find a way to convince themselves. Right. So
I don't question the images that were released from those who were killed or wounded at that site. I question the numbers. But I don't question that people were killed or wounded and that explosion happened. So I'm not going to sit here and say that video was faked. Something happened. You could see it with the location of the hospital, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, if that was fake, that was certainly elaborate. Just throwing fake and black flag operation and all this stuff out there.
Conspiracies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It gets old.
Yeah. I had somebody tell me once, not long ago, a few days ago, that the attack, the October 7th attack was staged.
Yeah.
And this is just like a normal guy, normal person, that I happened to meet. And he was just telling me what he thought. Like, oh, this was a staged attack or that the Israelis allowed it so they can go into Gaza and remove Hamas. And I'm just thinking to myself, what are you talking about? But but we see that everywhere now. Russia, Ukraine, I mean, that's another huge lots of conspiracy. So anyway, I'm seeing this in this particular war, unfortunately, but people want to see what they want to see. All right. And even if the Israelis had video of Islamic Jihad actually firing the rockets and tracking it and hitting the hospital or the outside of the hospital, people would still not believe it.
Yeah. No, very familiar with conspiracy theories, especially related to 9/11.
Oh yeah.
And creation. We created Al Qaeda. The United States created ISIS. The United States wanted the Taliban to take over Afghanistan. I mean, this is just, it's hard to tune that stuff out, but all right. Well, look, Joe, let's move on. Let's take a quick look what's happening in northern Israel. Yeah. Obviously in the south, the Israelis are conducting limited raids and airstrikes against Hamas. But the activity in the north, that's the front that you and I are both very concerned about. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah. So, basically since the war started, Hezbollah has been a little active, and I say a little because I know how powerful they are. But they've been keeping the border area, the Lebanon-Israel border, at a simmer. So we've been seeing daily attacks against IDF posts, IDF Merkava tanks, with guided missiles, and we've seen some light arms fire by Hezbollah members. So by members of Hezbollah, and also we've seen some retaliation response by the IDF. They've killed, I think, right now the count is either 11 or 12 members of Hezbollah that have been killed by the Israelis since this conflict started, this war started, and there are a few members of Hamas. That Hamas's branch in Lebanon, and as well Islamic Jihad's branch in Lebanon. They've tried to infiltrate the border from southern Lebanon. So that's kind of a new facet to this war that we're seeing a Palestinian front in the north, not open up necessarily, but attacks they're trying to launch attacks from there. So that's something interesting. But again, yes. Concerned it's going to get much worse. Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigades, and an assortment of other Palestinian groups are nothing compared to Hezbollah as far as the armament and training that Hezbollah has. So that's the concern, that all these are tens of thousands of rockets, maybe over 100,000 rockets. I've heard
100,000
or even more. I've heard 150,000.
Yeah.
Some,
I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. And some have, these PGMs that a lot of people have been talking about, the precision guided missiles. So, Hezbollah has the ability to hit sensitive sites in Israel. There's a Dimona nuclear reactor. Then there's there's other sites as well. And then they have anti-ship missile capability. So they can target the Israeli Navy. They can target the American Navy as well in the Mediterranean. So it's very concerning. So we're waiting, everyone's waiting. And I know they're concerned. I know the Israelis are super concerned. There's been a couple times where there have been false alerts of drone attacks inside Israel from Lebanon. And it's gotten the Israelis, super nervous, of course. And everyone's just waiting. Is Hezbollah actually going to open up a second front? So far, keeping it on a simmer, like I'm saying. But
yeah. So the activity's up from obviously pre-October 7th.
Yes.
But not to the point where the Israelis feel that they need to retaliate in, dare I say, in force, that they need to go ahead and
they're not bombing Beirut.
Massive
basically.
Strikes.
Yeah, they're not bombing Beirut yet.
Right.
Hopefully they don't. Hopefully it doesn't get to that. But yeah, it's not to the point where they're, where the Air Forces just do multiple attacks. But, I just don't know. Because the other thing is, Hezbollah understands that if they were to open up a second front, they are inviting, it's almost like mutual destruction, essentially. And Lebanon's already in chaos. Lebanon's so bad right now. And I'm not talking about just about Hezbollah, but economically and all sorts of other things. So I just don't think Lebanon could survive a massive attack from the Israelis, because it wouldn't be like a one-day thing. It'd be who knows how long. So
the Israelis were pretty clear that they would hold the Lebanese government responsible too.
They don't. Yes, that's common for them to say that.
Yeah. And as well they should. I mean, I heard the Lebanese, I believe it was their foreign minister, and he came out and basically said, we don't have control over Hezbollah. I mean,
they probably don't, but Hezbollah.
But to hear that admission, what is the U.S. putting billions of dollars into the Lebanese
and UNIFIL
military and then UNIFIL? We funded the Lebanese army so that it would prevent Hezbollah from going to war, and yet, what a mistake!
It bothers me so much because listen, the way I see it is that Hezbollah controls the LAF. I'm sorry, but they have guys in the LAF. You cannot tell me they don't. And there's a long history of it. Just people just don't look for it or don't want to believe it. But anyway, it's nuts to me. You could say that the U.S. government, directly or indirectly, is funding Hezbollah.
Well, Joe, just as we funded Hamas. This is the problem with our policy. I've noticed this in all of the wars that we fought that I've covered. We believe that we could throw money at the problem. If we give Hamas money, if we fund them, their government, that, maybe they'll be nice to Israel. If we fund Lebanese, maybe they'll be able to contain Hezbollah. if we fund an Afghan government, it could stand up to the Taliban. But like, if we give money to Pakistan, maybe they'll constrain the Taliban and fight terrorism. And yet, in a lot of these instances, I'll leave out the Afghan one because that's a little different. But the Lebanese look at us with contempt. The Hamas looks at us with contempt. 30 Americans killed, 13 at least in custody or whereabouts unknown. That's what I don't know how many billions of dollars probably went into Gaza. How many billions of dollars are going to Lebanon? We're probably going to get a front open there against Israel. Pakistan, I know we spent over $30 billion so they could, fund the Taliban, arm and train the Taliban to kill 2,000 American troops. Just throwing money at a problem, that's just not a solution. We see it here domestically and we see it globally. And honestly, in my opinion, it doesn't work in either instance, but particularly overseas, it's a massive failure.
Right. Yeah. Throwing money at terrorist groups doesn't change their ideology.
Yeah. They just hold us in contempt. They look at us.
Thank you.
Yeah. they laugh at us. I mean, look, we invested a lot of money into Gaza. How the president of the United States can't unconditionally demand the release of American citizens. I'll just sidestep the issue of justice for the Americans killed, but I want my citizens back. No, we have to negotiate. And you know what? They look at us and they laugh. And, our friend Tom Jocelyn always called this servile diplomacy. And, it's exactly what it is. I mean, we subsume ourselves to the will of terrorist organizations. What we did in Afghanistan with signing a deal with the Taliban. It's with supporting Hamas. It's with giving money to the Lebanese to fund Hezbollah, or basically to be ineffective against Hezbollah, if you want to look at it that way. Just mistake after mistake after mistake, and we don't learn from them.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you, Bill.
I'll get off my soapbox on that one. Finally, there's been a somewhat important Hezbollah commander killed. Tell us a little bit more about him. What's the significance?
Yeah, it was Hamas.
I'm sorry, Hamas. My mistake.
Of course, no. There's so much going on. Yeah. Ayman Nofal is his name. He was killed either yesterday or the day before. Can't get the exact date right, but the IDF acknowledged or put out a statement saying that they killed him. Hamas acknowledged it. Basically, this Nofal was a high-ranking commander in Hamas. He also was a key leader in the Palestinian Joint Operations Room, which is basically a grouping of all the Palestinian armed groups. And in previous years, including this one, of course, they have fought Israel in a coordinated manner. So he was right now, today, he's the most important, I would say, terrorist killed during this war. So it's an accomplishment, at least for the Israelis. So he was killed in an airstrike, but I expect more, a lot more, many more. As this conflict drags on, but there's a few big guys out there. We've talked about them: Marwan Issa, Yahya Sinwar, and of course Mohammed Deif. So though they have a huge target on their back, so we'll see.
I call that a good start, but a lot of work to be done. Yeah, Deif is definitely on the top of my list. That guy, he needs to go. It's time.
Yeah, they've tried a lot. Believe me, they've almost got him a few times, but
he's a ghost.
Yeah.
Some of these guys are good at their jobs. Look, we don't have to like them, but we certainly should respect them. Joe, great to see you. Great to do this in person. Danielle, thank you so much. Love the studio. This is fantastic. We got to do this again, hopefully soon. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for today's episode of Generation Jihad. Just a reminder, you can find us on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Make sure you subscribe and leave us a review, preferably a positive one, only if we earned it. Thanks again. We'll see you all again soon.